Welcome back to Taking Stock, where we get to talk to experts in our small business community about the common challenges they are facing in their business and how to solve them in a way that leads to better business, more productive teams, and strong communities. As always, I'm your host, Deke Bowman, head of product here at Koble. Today, we're here with Jonathan Brownell. Jonathan's work in software development spans over 30 years. He's led the development of solutions for clients ranging from small family businesses to global industries, including John Deere, Hewlett Packard, General Motors, and the U.S. Department of Defense. Jonathan has built products and services generating over $1 billion of revenue and has been developing EBMS customizations for 2.5 years. He works from the Koble office in Moscow, Idaho, where he lives with his family. Today, we're going to talk through his approach to customizations and how they are most helpful in a software like ERP. Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
I'd love for you to give us your elevator pitch. What does the customization team actually do at Koble?
Thanks, Deech. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be with you today. So we work with clients who use EBMS to run their businesses. When they come to us with requests to change the software to suit their workflows better, it could be as simple as adding some extra fields to report printouts, to invoices or statements, or it could be as complicated as building a new module, new data structures for different things they're working with, problems they're facing. One thing we're doing more and more of is passing data back and forth with external systems, with web services their customers are using to keep them in sync with EBMS and to solve those kinds of problems.
Okay.
And over the course of the year, we deal with hundreds of requests. There's a lot of chances we have to talk with customers and to work through this sort of thing. And I personally just really love working in this space. I get to see the effects of the software improvements we're making in the daily life of small businesses, and that's just a big deal. For me, I've worked in bigger tech companies in the past with a lot more distance between me and the customer, and this Koble is just a whole different world. I love being able to collaborate with the users of EBMS and help them this way. It's fantastic.
Awesome. Let's zoom out. Why do the companies that you work with need ERP customizations in the first place? Like, let's start with the premise of a product like EBMS or other ERPs often describe themselves as a platform to be extended. So maybe you can unpack that for listeners to understand, like, what does that mean and why customization?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. So running a business is complicated. It's just not practical to design ERP software that right out of the box will suit every possible workflow. If you did that sort of thing, it would feel like a Boeing 747 cockpit. And one of the goals of an ERP system is usability and efficiency. You don't want every staff member of the company to have to go through weeks and weeks of training to learn the way around the system. So there's a
Right.
balance between being configurable for their business objectives, and making it easy to use, making it streamlined. So I started working with accounting software first back in the 90s with the early versions of QuickBooks. And in the software industry, we talk about software being opinionated. And QuickBooks was a
Mhm.
really good example of that. It was like you do it exactly their way. At least in that period of time, I have some vivid
Right.
memories. And if your accounting didn't look the way that they liked it, or your product management didn't look the way that they liked it, you were pretty much on your own. And so
Mhm.
EBMS obviously has evolved over a long period of time, and we have modules to help with payroll and benefits and sales person commissions and point of sale systems, job costing, e-commerce, manufacturing, warehousing. There's the long list of capabilities that we have in the software. Each one of those has grown up into its own industry with dedicated software stacks to serve them. So we're not in a position to do all things to all people, and we
Mhm.
try to balance, again, the features of our core software to address the needs of small and medium-sized businesses as much as we can out of the box, and then make it as extensible as possible so that when the need comes to extend beyond that, we can step in as a team and help with that process.
Yeah. So first of all, there's this question is that you called out this obvious thing, like there's this whole warehouse management systems, like large pieces of software to do warehouse management or logistics or manufacturing or various things. Um, and yet it's pretty common for ERPs to be that single source of truth reality, and they all have functionality in those spaces, but they often no ERP does them all, like the very specific big platforms for those specific roles. Um, at what point do customizations show up? Like, when is it important? Why, or when, if I'm a business owner, do I think about uh, integrating with a third-party solution and customizing a workflow, adding data? What does that look like in your experience with customers?
So figuring that out is a big part of my job. And it boils down to a combination of knowing the software really well, and knowing the industry, the different solutions that are out there, and then just understanding the standard business procedures, so that we can tell if something that somebody's asking for runs against the grain, and
Mhm.
our putting a customization together for them might feel right in the moment, but 6 months or a year down the road, they could end up beleaguered and trying to undo and shift the way that it looks in their business. And so
Yeah.
that investigation process is a really big deal. And I oftentimes will partner up with our systems consultants. They do a fantastic job. They'll travel on site and work with our clients hands-on. Their
Hmm.
goal is to figure out the best way to fine tune not just EBMS, but the way that their business operates. And that can be through transforming internal procedures, the way they handle finance, the way they do order taking or track manufactured items,
Hmm.
all sorts of different decision points there. And at other times, there's a really clear opportunity where we can step in with a customization to either refine EBMS to suit what they need, or connect
Hmm.
externally to a system that will fill that niche, and has a right value proposition for what they need in the business.
That's good. Or do you have some like highlight customizations that you thought that you could that come to mind that maybe are examples of either uh, maybe something that somebody wanted to do that was like that's I hear and understand what your goal is, but the road that might take you is not a road you want to go down, versus something where you're like, oh, that's a perfect application of a customization. Just that gives kind of a compare and contrast.
That's a good question. So oftentimes we'll recognize, the scope of a customization really doesn't fit where EBMS sits in the larger business context. We
Yeah.
we deal with customers and vendors and products and employees day in and day out. But if a customer is trying to solve a problem, with internal manufacturing or something that's really industry specific in a way that there's not a lot of overlap with their ERP. They'll will oftentimes recommend other solutions in the industry, people we've worked with, or consultants to help with that. And maybe they will end up with a bit of a customization, maybe to do some data export and import with another system.
Mhm.
But definitely not trying to make EBMS be the be all solution to every
Right.
kind of problem. Um,
Sure.
and yeah, other customization requests will come in, and it's just this is apple pie. We serve this right up every day, and it's
Right.
right squarely in the natural position of our team and the kinds of workflows. A lot of our customers spend more than half their day in EBMS screens, and so as much
Yeah.
as we can do to make things intuitive and convenient for them there, the better.
Yeah. Can you give me a concrete example of something that's a slice of apple pie, so to speak, for a
Yeah,
customer?
sure. For example, so we have worked recently with a landscaping company, and their business is heavily seasonal. So they'll have
Yeah.
the kinds of products they'll sell in the springtime versus the fall or the winter, varies dramatically. And the vendors that they work with are also tuned to do business seasonally. And in fact, they'll have early buy specials in like the October, November of the preceding
Hmm.
year, when there's not a lot of activity. If you get your order in, if you forecast things correctly, then
Yeah.
they'll realize a discount on the pricing for something like that. So we've been able to step in and build a sales forecasting to a much more fine-tuned degree
Mhm.
than what EBMS comes with out of the box, which is a more generic solution, and give guidance to the business as they're preparing their orders, so that they can even in an audit to an automated degree, which is
Mm.
really important because a lot of these there's just have an enormous product catalog with thousands and thousands of items, and it's not practical to try to go through one by one and evaluate and make those decision points. So for the software to be able to recommend not just how much to buy, but when to buy it and how to position
Mhm.
those order placements has been a huge win for them.
Gotcha. That's cool. That's a fun optimization. It's all data inside of EBMS, obviously, so it's something you can use to. Yeah, that's cool. Um, can you give us the life cycle? So, well, first of all, well, you talked a bit about that customization versus standard versus extension part. So yeah, take us through the life cycle. I've come to you with a request. We've determined a customization is the solution. Who all's involved? How do you scope it? How do you create a cost? What should I expect as a user or a customer that's going to happen, and how does it sequence out?
Yeah. So oftentimes, I'm the primary contact. Sometimes I'm dealing with an individual. Sometimes I'm dealing with a team or a cross-functional team at the customer site that's looking to solve a
Mm.
particular kind of problem. And I can pull in additional folks on my end to consult as well. When if I run out of tether on my familiarity with this
Sure.
with the software or with that particular niche. Um, but my goal is ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. I want to understand the business problems that you're trying to solve and the biggest pain points that you're experiencing that drive you to the potential need for a customization. And so over the course of those conversations, I'll build out a spec and a proposal write up that describes the way we would extend the software, the new
Mm.
screens that it would present, new controls, new reports. Those are all detailed out, and along with a price for our team to build it out and the time frame that we can deliver it in. Um,
That's great.
and yeah, so once that is all settled, and if that meets with approval on our team, we'll schedule it internally and start planning out how we're going to address it.
Mm.
Oftentimes, our customers will already have customizations in place. Sometimes we're building customizations on top of customizations. We see this very much in the context of a long-term customer relationship. It's not just a one-shot, throw it over the wall sort of activity.
Yeah,
And
right.
so yeah, so the planning stage needs to take in the characteristics of their environment and their configuration and the way that they use EVMS on a day-to-day basis. It's not just something that we build on a blank slate. Um,
Yeah.
so our engineers will code up the solution. We have a team of four folks that work alongside me, and each one of them has particular specializations. And so we'll coordinate that work internally, build it up on according to the plan. We'll do internal testing, and then if it's something that's fairly complex, we'll connect
Hmm.
remotely to the customer environment and have a sandbox environment where they can
Hmm.
use the new feature and the customization before it goes live in production. We want to make sure that it's giving them exactly what they want, and that we're
Hmm.
not having to do much course correction after it's live. And
Hmm.
then after we roll to production, then we're still in contact with the customer. We're still making sure that it's performing the way that it should. So this has worked pretty well for us. It usually ends up in a stable deployment, and it's our goal is to be as least disruptive as possible and to introduce these in a very controlled way.
Yeah, it sounds awesome. Um, it also sounds like it's like the ideal product development scenario, right? You're working as close to the customer and the problem with clear definition and good feedback cycles to get you to the destination. So that sounds really fun to do. What makes them good? What and in term, I guess is what makes a customization good? What are characteristics of it? And maybe to contrast that, what are things that you run into where you're like, oh no, we that's something we want to avoid in doing in the realm of customization.
Oftentimes the same principle I think that make customizations good is the same thing that makes software good. We want it to fit really naturally into the system. We want it to sit clearly in a way where it's usable and it's efficient.
Hmm.
And at the same time, we want to be careful not to build a giant monolithic system that, connects in 25 different points and is brittle in terms of EBMS upgrades that might come with, new built-in features or changes to the data
Right.
model. So our goal is, so we consider a customization good from the customer perspective in terms of their usability and it meeting
Right.
their business goals, and also with kind of a long view of, we want to sleep at night, when the new EBMS versions roll out, and sometimes literally we can't. And so we're developing a good sense of, how customizations can be done in a very
Mm.
sustainable long term way that doesn't introduce baggage or hindrances that would second guess our work later on.
Yeah, that's good. One of the things, a question that is kind of bubbling, I think, in my mind is how timeless is a customization. So I imagine, having worked with some customers, that we're going to invest some money, we're going to make this custom thing function, get a script to do something special for our workflow that matches our business, and we'll we'll spin that and we'll be done, we'll be good. And yet I don't know that businesses are that static. So when you approach customizations, or maybe I've encountered this before, where you're either editing a customization, or maybe it's abandoning a customization and coming back uh, later on to something else. What's that look like? Well, what is a good, healthy expectation for that within a software?
That's a great question. So customizations that we build have a life cycle, just like regular software has a life cycle, and we have to be, like I said earlier, we have to be disciplined about building it with a view towards that long-term customer relationship. Um, our goal is to continue hearing back from the customers as
Yeah.
they grow and build new teams, as they take on new kinds of products. We want to build customizations that work well for them now
Mhm.
and also can continue to be extended for them later. And so that flexibility and that customizability is a feature of my planning processes
Mm.
as I'm figuring these out. Um, and it has reaped a lot of benefits. We have, customizations that have run for decades now and have served
Mhm.
businesses in so many different ways. I'm really pleased at the degree that EBMS is able to handle a lot of really niche business needs and make them
Mhm.
feel like an intuitive, natural part of the software.
That's awesome. All right, I want to get into some of the weeds of some examples. So you shared about one customization from the landscaping company. I would love to have another story. What's another customization that really moved the needle for a customer? Where and if you, as you're describing, if you could articulate what the problem was, what the challenge they were facing, what you built, and how that changed the business.
Sure. So another business recently, and this is an example of a customization that closely linked up to an external service. So a lot of their business is conducted over the phone. They've got phone reps who are really active doing sales, answering customer questions, and
Mm.
um, they just being really detailed about how to optimize those paths and how to help deliver a good experience to their customers.
Mhm.
We talked to them and came up with a concept of their phone system for their business has
Okay.
a web enabled service that can send notifications to the desktop of a support rep who's got the phone right next to
Ah.
them there. And so we worked out a system where when the phone rings, EBMS is notified and can, based on the phone number, locate the customer that it's associated with or locate the vendor that it's associated with, pull up their records immediately and have those at the ready, without having to jump through hoops of having to do searches. How do you spell your last
Wow.
name again? That sort of thing. And so that's an aspect of the business that oftentimes isn't the first thing that
Mhm.
you think about being able to optimize, but it actually made a big difference for them.
That's huge, especially if you have a business in a community where there's a lot of shared names. So in
Yeah.
conservative and Baptist community where we work a lot with the joke of a John Stoltzfus or a Yoder, many of them, and which one or and phone number is the distinguisher, likely in many cases. That's great. Um, what's one of the more complex or creative builds your team has tackled recently? So something that makes where you saw that, and I think we've been in conversations more than once where we know it's going to be hard, but you're kind of going like, that's going to be fun and interesting because it's complex and difficult. It makes the juices flow a little bit. So yeah, what's one of those stories?
So we're actually working on a project right now for a distributor, a food distributor, and they are involved in a massive amount of warehousing and storage, and
Hmm.
they have very particular needs as far as the organization of their products, and orders that are oftentimes upwards of 1,000 rows in
Oh
content,
wow.
along with huge warehouses where they don't always have internet connectivity for somebody who's running
Mm,
around filling orders, putting boxes on pallets. And so, as we talked through their needs, we came up with a concept of a custom mobile app for them that would allow them, that would be so fine tuned to the way that their business does order fulfillment, that it goes beyond anything that we could just customize out of the box in the standard
mm,
EBMS tool set for order fulfillment. And so, yeah, as they started walking through the scenarios that they face, and the work that their order pickers do, they're really came to light a huge opportunity to help them with this, and it's the kind of software development project that is really satisfying. And so it's been
mm.
a lot of fun to work with them on detailing out exactly how we can, lay out the UI, how we can make it run as efficiently as possible for their particular products and their particular warehouse organization. And I'm excited. We're going to be rolling it out soon, and that's one I'm putting a lot of time into these days.
That sounds fun. Yeah, I think we talked about that project, and I knew about it on the periphery, but it's yeah, those are fun. They especially when you connect enough of those dots, where it's, I mean, that company's doing that so many times a day. Uh, Going in the warehouse, you see forklifts and skid loaders zooming back and forth. Um, that'll be transformational for sure
Yeah,
in the
we're really
process.
really glad to be able to work with them on it, because you can go out and find companies that can build apps for you,
Yeah.
but to be so close to the ERP system and to be able to
Hmm.
build it and have an intuitive sense of, this is the sweet spot for what we can deliver here, is really satisfying.
Yeah, this is interesting because what I'm hearing for you as a customization team is it's not just a report, it's not just a calculation script, it's not just adding features, but even a fully bundled functional product in the case of this mobile app that you're putting out into the world, or an integration with a third party piece of software, which is that's a broad breadth of projects to have to manage, scope, and build. So that's not an easy job for sure, but sounds fun.
I enjoy it.
Uh, what are some of the requests that you were encountered that are technically possible, um, but strategically not the right move? And I'm not asking you to name or call out a company, but if you have any examples of that might be helpful for a listener, uh, that could help them maybe rethink how they think about what they might want for customization, which seems like torpedoing your job, but you're looking for the right solution, and sometimes uh, the yes, we can do that with enough time and money isn't the right answer to say that we should do that with time and money. So what's it? If you could give an example of some of that could but shouldn't,
Yeah.
that might be helpful.
Sure. So we were dealing with one of our clients who has a really active schedule of service trucks doing deliveries and service calls. and they have a fleet that they need to manage really closely,
Mhm.
down to route planning and mapping out and with dispatching jobs to a degree that was beyond anything that is native in the Koble suite of products.
Mhm.
In this case, we investigated this and worked with them and ended up recommending, yeah, there are services out there that will do that a lot more cost effectively than we would be able to roll out a solution for you internally within the EBMS ecosystem.
Mhm.
But the story doesn't end there. It's then an opportunity for us to connect with that system and to push order details and service details to the system and get back enough information. So from EBMS, you can still have a sense of, oh, here's the customer order and here's the delivery date and here's when and how a service call is scheduled. So that ideally the depth of some third-party system is available to use by their dispatch leader who's coordinating all this fleet. But
Yeah.
the data that is relevant in the ERP context is still something that you can access through EBMS and is available at your fingertips for the rest of the organization.
Mhm. Nice. That's great. Let's talk about some of the possible pitfalls. What are some early warning signs that a company um, thinks it needs a customization, but it might need something else? So it's maybe a process change or report, or yeah, what that might be.
The first danger sign is probably just that they're looking for something that's kind of against the grain of a standard business practice. and
Mhm.
that's something that as oftentimes as businesses grow, they have they're very nearsighted about, this is the problem we have to solve today, and the tool belt that they carry around with them oftentimes is EBMS, and the intuitive easy the solution that seems like low hanging fruit oftentimes isn't the best way to think about it. And
Mhm.
so um, that's something that I do my best to uncover as early on in the
Yeah.
conversations as possible. And sometimes I'm in a position to give them some other advice. Other times I'll pull in a systems consultant or someone else who's able to speak to that with more authority in terms of business practices and the way that
Mhm.
this is approached in their kind of business. And we've seen over and over and over again how those kinds of more of a consulting engagement at a business and a workflow perspective, not my walking in and writing some code, is a much
Yeah.
better way to address the problem.
Yeah. That's good. How do you balance that? You talked about how you often look at the tailored view or the long view. You want the customer to have a good experience, but are there trade-offs in that tailored fit where it works just as everyone's imagining and hoping for in that future proofing? And how do you manage that tension if it shows up?
Yep. So I work in really close contact with the product teams, the core EVMS developers, and to have a sense of their roadmap, the ways that they envision EVMS growing, and trying to locate the right way to implement a customization so that it operates in harmony with EVMS as a product.
Mhm.
I want to make sure that we're going about this in a way that is going to be long lived and isn't going to introduce problems and issues down the road in the future. And so their input has saved us from making decisions that ultimately we would have regretted and had to go back and put some more work, some corrective work on
Yeah.
otherwise. So I'm really grateful for the staff. You hear me keep talking about the other individuals and the other team members within Koble. I'm so pleased to be involved in an organization that has that level of collaboration. It's a real joy.
Yeah, it's also fun to work with you because there's so many times as a product leader, I understand the problem and I want to solve it, but I have that tension of this is special. This isn't a standard solution, and if I did this, I would cause so many more problems for so many other businesses. So to have somebody on the other side of that, so that I can actually solve those problems in that way is super powerful.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
if you had a button that instantly removed one type of customization request from the world, what would it be?
Oh, I wouldn't hit the button. I enjoy all the customization requests. As
I,
every chance that I have to talk to customers, it helps my perspective. And even it's something that if it's something that just is just wildly unfortunate and inappropriate right on the face of it, and I feel bad for having wasted their time. That's an opportunity for us to talk internally and for us to know how to handle those
Mhm.
calls of those kinds of requests. So I don't know if I could come up with an answer to that one. That's a great
No,
question
that's great.
though.
It's kind of a funny question in that regard. Um, I would love to hear any memorable stories you have. If you have one, two, three, whatever, where the customization completely changed how the customer interact with the ERP or use their ERP. Where, uh, yeah, the current and the future state where it's a massive shift. What's a couple of those stories?
Um, uh, to be honest, most of the time people aren't coming to a customization looking for a massive shift. They're coming
Mm,
to a customization looking for to enable a particular improvement. Um, and it's rare that someone's in EBMS existence, again, people are using the system all day long, is completely changed and transformed by this. And so usually that's not what I'm targeting.
mm,
And the massive shift kind of concept, it tends to be the really just monolithic, bloated, extending out awkwardly in all directions sort of a change on the system. And as much as we can in a case like that, if someone comes to us and says, I want this to work completely differently, we'll
yeah.
boil that down. We'll talk through it and we'll say, okay, well, here are, here's let's not call this a customization. Let's call this 7 different customizations.
Right.
And then, maybe this one is really good to chase right now. And a couple of these you should just keep on ice and go through these in stages and see how the
Mhm.
product evolves and see how the way that you use it changes as these roll out. So as much as I can, I actually lean away from anything huge and large scale like that. But I'm happy to talk about the stories where the customers just had persistent pain points and were able to solve them. A common one that we've done a couple times now is companies that do a lot of freight shipping, and
Okay.
what we've discovered is the companies doing a lot of business and doing a lot of work with freight have really specific individual needs. They're working with a particular TMS, they're working with particular freight providers. They've
Mhm.
negotiated good rates with these particular companies, and there's not really a generic way to solve that problem. And
Mhm.
so the default experience on their part would have to be a lot of double entry of taking the characteristics of their EDMS sales order and going to a freight system and copying and pasting and filling all this out and trying to capture the rates and then pulling back in the shipment numbers and things like that so that EDMS can be aware of it. Um,
Mhm.
and literally every customer that we talk about freight with has a completely different shipping system that they prefer and that they're
Mhm.
optimized for, and sometimes it's related to particular geographies. So this is a big area that we've put a lot of focus on, and because of that, we've chosen to keep it as a customization rather than to say EBMS has a standard feature that handles all of your freight needs, because
Right.
we discovered and we know better than that it wouldn't.
Yeah.
and,
Right.
and
Right.
so but that it's perfectly in the sweet spot of a customization to be able to step in and connect programmatically out to these services so that we can still do rate quoting and present those within the context of EVMS, confirm shipments, bring in the tracking details and things like that. That
Mhm.
is it in nearly every case just a huge help productivity for the customer.
That's
Um,
great.
yeah,
Go ahead.
we had another area that we're called in to help with often is marketing requests. So businesses, according to their particular the product domain and the way that they work with our
Mhm.
clients, they'll have product catalogs that they'll want to distribute, or regular emails to say, here are the new items this month and that sort of thing. And being able to generate those from a product catalog where all the
Mm,
details are baked into EVMS, and we're able to put together a customizable um, way of distributing that, be it a PDF or a custom generated email. Again, the branding and so many characteristics of that, because we have businesses that offer so many different kinds of products. Again,
right.
there's not really a one size fits all solution to that, but it's an area where EDMS is able to be a huge help to a marketing department and a sales department, and oftentimes in workflows where they're not used to relying on EVMS, they're used to
Yeah.
doing things more manually or by hand or trying to keep track of things separately with spreadsheets or
Mm.
whatever. We can step in and put together some automation that makes that really successful and save a lot of time.
It's it's great. On your first example, it was about shipping, and one of the things that you said that caught my attention was you would think that there's a standard version or way of doing this that covers all the scenarios, or something of that nature. But we're smarter than that. We know we can't, and that's a perfect place for customization. Are there other areas in business management where customers should imagine or maybe reframe what they think should be standard versus are really ideal for customization?
It's hard to paint with that broad of a brush.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would hesitate to be too generic about statements like that. Freight is a good example just because it's something that is so common in businesses, and yet
Yeah.
also when you get down to the details of it, it varies in so many interesting little particular ways. That's unusual in the business landscape. Most things we're able to approach and say, here is a pretty middle of the road way of operating with
Yeah.
a few standard configuration options that would give you the ability to manipulate it for your particular business, and
Mhm.
then be extensible with customizations that where we can step in and divert things further if it's something that is really necessary for what you need. Um, and so, yeah, freight is definitely unusual in that case where I could make that broad of a statement. There's not a lot of other sorts of problems that I would approach that way.
That's, yeah, good to know. All right, what does a successful customization look like after go live? And how do you know it's working? How does the customer know it's working?
Oh, we get feedback from customers. One thing I love about clients is they are not afraid of speaking their mind and letting us know how closely we hit the mark, how well it's working for what they needed in their business, and we're very committed to seeing the customizations all the way through. Occasionally, that means jumping back into the fray if our conversations with them didn't catch particular aspects of
Mm,
what they needed. We'll need to jump in and make some adjustments, modify the code for one case or another.
yeah.
Usually that's pretty rare. But the relationships that we have with our clients keeps us in very, very regular communication, and sometimes they'll come directly to us with that. Sometimes we'll hear about it through customer support. We'll get feedback, but yeah, customizations are very much very much have a long trajectory, and that's something
Mhm.
that we don't walk away from.
Yeah, it's great. What advice would you give to a business leader trying to decide if they need a customization? And what should they be thinking through if they're pretty sure they do?
Yeah, if you're facing a need in the ERP software and you have an idea, if you're seeing a consistent point of friction in the organization, if your employees are stumbling over things, if people are clicking the wrong button so frequently, all the way up to you're eyeballing third-party systems out there that look like they could really transform certain areas of your
Hmm.
business, but you're scratching your head saying, how would I connect that to EVMS? How do I use these in a coherent way in tandem with each other? Um, those are the conversations that
Hmm.
you should yeah, pick up the phone and contact our team. Those are the conversations I get to have every day, and I love hearing about problems and ideas and scoping out those kinds of solutions. We consult on all sorts of things like that, and the collaboration with your to see us as partners in building out an ERP that serves your business as best as it can. Those lines of communication should be really open, and you should absolutely feel free to reach out. I'd love to talk about it.
That's great. One other question I want to ask, just because we've kind of talked around it, but we've not named it, and it's in our history at Koble. We've talked about automation in the past, and it's not uncommon for customers to talk about automatically or automating different things. Where does that show up in the customization landscape in terms of essentially the if then that, the if this then that kind of sequences that you might see in like citizen programming? Do you all, as part of your customizations, end up building those kinds of workflows?
We do, and that's an interesting landscape. So oftentimes the customer will come to us and say, I want when this happens, when some kind of trigger is reached, I want all this to happen behind the scenes, because right
Hmm.
now it's a really manual process and it drives me nuts.
Yeah.
And we've scoped out those customizations. That's the kind of thing we can absolutely build. But then and this has been one of my learnings personally is um, after rolling it out, 2 weeks go by and they say, actually, I need kind of a decision point halfway through, or I need to decide, do I want this or do I not want this? And the automation sounds really great on the surface of it, but automation also is something that locks you in to a particular behavior and to a particular business process. And
Yep.
so it's something that you want to approach really carefully. And that's not to say, oh, we can't help you. It's to say we want to automate only the things that are absolutely that you can rely on 100% of the time, that you don't mind happening behind your back. You really don't ever want to think about again. We can automate those for you, and let's also figure out the points where what's the natural place to give
Mhm.
you away. Maybe you don't need an automated action to take place on the orders that are in a particular state. Maybe what you need is a way to go review a batch of orders, and it could be a couple hundred orders at a time. But you need a chance to just look through them and see some color-coded rows, and to give you feedback, and to select
Mhm.
all, and maybe uncheck a couple of them, and then click go, and everything happens. And
Mhm.
that gives you an enormous amount of control and feedback over the process. Um, and it can be and can give you just as many of the benefits as automation for a
Mhm.
very tiny of a fraction of the amount of time that you're spending doing those kinds of actions one at a time today. So we
Mhm.
really look at the whole spectrum of how we can solve those kinds of problems rather than locking ourselves into a particular mindset. And automation is a great subject that we end up talking a lot about, and figuring out the best way to fine tune that for a business.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. Um, I found that it was often when I was doing some Power Automate work with customers that the this shows up, right? This is going to happen when we press go. This is always going to happen. So the except for statement is really, really important to know. Like when do you intuitively know that this is not really true, and yeah, finding out how that. So, what would you recommend for a business owner to do if they're thinking about automations? Are there steps like mapping it out, whiteboarding, just understand in terms of knowing those conditions?
Mhm. That's usually the kind of conversation that is most effective to have with a team internal with the company, because you need the perspective of the different departments, of the
Hmm.
different ways people are using EBMS and using the system. And oftentimes something that one person wishes would be completely automated sounds like a perfect nightmare to another individual in the company. And so it's thinking about that, and working through the requirements for that kind of customization or that kind of workflow. That's something that you really want to have input in
Hmm.
from every angle possible.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Jonathan, this has been a fun conversation. I'm sure we'll have one again. Maybe we'll have you on and have you demo some of the stuff you've done, your team has done in the past. A question I ask every guest I've been had on the show is, what's a couple of books that they might recommend for our listeners? I think of business owners as people who are constantly learning, and reading is definitely one way of doing that. So, what's something that you would recommend?
Oh, that's a good question. Give me a second. Let me think.
That's a tough. I think you're a person who reads lots of books. That's an unkind question.
It's hard to boil it down. Um, let's see. So one of the best books I read recently is a book called Failure Nerve,
Okay.
and it's a fantastic book just on leadership and the thought process of how to approach problems and teams and communication and face
Mm.
solving solving issues. Really really enlightening for me, and I learned a lot from it. That would be right at the top of my list.
That's great. Failure of nerve.
Failure
Um,
nerve.
yeah. We'll put a link in the show notes for that. Thanks, Jonathan. It's been fun. Enjoy working with you and enjoy hearing the stories of the things you get to work on, which is great. Thanks everyone for tuning into today's episode. If you enjoyed our conversation and found it helpful, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. We'll keep bringing you practical advice and expert perspectives to help you better build a better business, more productive teams, and stronger communities. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to consider in the future, let us know by emailing us at marketing@koblesystems.com. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, I'm Deke Bowman, and this is Taking Stock. We'll see you soon.